felt welcome to the land earlier today and take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we all are. This session is a half-hour panel on discussion of the book called Cultivating Compassion, Going Beyond Crisis.
Recording in progress.
On today's panel are the editors of this both timely and timeless book, Venerable Dr. Juewei, Professor Suzanne Franzway, and Professor Stephen Hill. Our Master of Ceremonies, Associate Professor Pema, introduced Venerable Juewei beautifully earlier today, and I just would like to add that I'm inspired by Venerable's ability to envision the brighter futures and work for those futures while uplifting the communities through her wisdom and compassion. And I also welcome Professor Suzanne Franzway, who is an emeritus professor of sociology and gender studies at the University of South Australia and an adjunct professor at the Tien Institute in Australia. She is motivated by the puzzles and passions of the politics of everyday life and social justice. And finally, I'm welcoming Professor Stephen Hill, who is a chair of the Humanistic Buddhism Center Advisory Committee and honorary professor at the University of Wollongong, with the commitment to make knowledge work for people's welfare. Stephen's career includes many highlights, such as the serving as a United Nations Regional Director for Science for Asia and the Pacific, among many others. So I'm very honored to be hosting this session for this tireless Bodhisattva warriors whose contribution to this book is only a part of tireless work in building the scholarship of humanistic Buddhism and guiding its practical application in communities of practice and learning. And as this is the last 30 minutes of the colloquium, we will focus on reflecting on the insights from the book, which serves as a resonant guide in the COVID-affected, isolating times, yet carrying that wisdom cultivated then into the present. And what a time we live in today, in completing 2024 with continuing wars, more climate disasters, and shaken political landscapes. So the structure will be a little bit different. I will ask each panelist a question. It will be followed by 5-6 minute reflection, and we will move on to the next question. There will be no Q&A due to the time limit, but you're mostly welcome to write your comments, and I would like Venerable to conclude the session at the end. So, Venerable, I would like to start with you. Can you share with us what is the story of the book? How did the book happen? And were the specific points that have emerged over the days of the symposium in 2021? Were there any specific points there in relation to compassion as the key theme of the book?
Sure. Thank you so much, Katya, for giving me the opportunity to set the stage. This book was published just less than a year ago and is the result of the 2021 8th International Symposium on Humanistic Buddhism that was held to explore the humanistic Buddhist responses to modern crises. And that was during the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Almost all of humanity worked together against a common enemy. And that I noticed to be an unprecedented global cooperation, the first that I saw in my lifetime. So I guess that was what motivated Suzanne, Stephen, and I to invite the presenters of that symposium to publish their thoughts in an edited book. Because we strongly believe that compassion in the human value is needed to allow us to go beyond the crises that we were facing then. And in the book, not only do we have chapters about the climate disaster, gender-based violence, attention deficit due to social media and massacres, but also how compassion has been successfully used as a pedagogy in educating doctors, being used in art classes, in mediation, in community pantries, and just giving us so much hope. Just reading those stories. Well, now we are here in 2024, and it appears to be a lot more challenging than 2021. While there is no more lockdown, we have increased extractive and exploitative human activity, pushing the planet to its limits. Wars that have lasted for years, extreme and unusual climate conditions that could happen anywhere, escalating costs of living, and mental health issues caused by technological addiction. So this colloquium was conceived for that. But at the same time, I believe that this book, with all its published chapters, provides the foundation for many of the experiences that we have heard today. So in the context of what we have discussed these past 24 hours, I've heard many hopeful, compassionate responses. And for that, I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank all speakers and all contributors. I hope that the editors today as editors today, we can discuss this book and see how it continues to remain relevant in such trying times. Thank you.
Yeah.
Back to you, Kat.
Yes, thank you so much. I agree. That's I suppose one of the most important questions in terms of its relevance, and thank you, Venerable, for outlining the conception of the book and how it came to be. And perhaps, Suzanne, can I ask you to continue here? The book focuses on how compassion, especially as understood in Buddhist teachings, plays a crucial role in addressing modern crisis, be it, as Venerable said, persistent wars, climate change, or social isolation. And it does seem that the history is repeating itself, while on the way throwing in new challenges for us, such as an arising of immersive AI, for instance. Was the world changing so quickly? What is it about the nature of compassion that makes it a constant force for good? And what examples come to your mind where the practice of compassion becomes vital for the proper response in a crisis? In the context of the book, yeah. You muted? You're still muted a bit? Yay. Yeah.
Now you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Katya, for introducing me, and also to Venerable for that introduction to how the book came about. And I would like to say first that the book is the result of the work of a whole lot of people who, first of all, organised that symposium, of the people who contributed their thoughts and papers to that particular symposium and to the discussions during that time. And then following that, to the people from that symposium who answered our call to develop their ideas as they'd been presented, and then going beyond that from that symposium. And then to the co-editors as well, as we then, as it were, wrangled. We wrangled those papers into sort of some, hopefully, into a sort of layout that provides some sort of coherence to the whole project. And as you said, Katya, the idea of cultivating compassion was a very powerful idea for us at the time. It has become, I guess, even more potent today. And the way I see that is that actually in these tough times, compassion for ourselves and for our dear ones, and compassion for our communities, and then for the larger world as well, is it feels like one of the absolutely essential things we need to be working on as much as we possibly can, because in a sense it's more visible now, the opposite of compassion. The opposite of compassion seems to be given a great deal of attention and airplay, and causing huge amounts of suffering. To be able to respond to that compassion in a compassionate way requires real skill, attention, and work, actually. Mm-hmm. And I think what the contributors to this book are offering is a whole range of different ways of coming at that, which can speak to people who come from a whole different range of areas. So, if you might be an educationalist, or you might be a community organizer, or you might be an artist, a whole range of possibilities that come through and talk about in the book. People talk about how, from their particular position in the world, life experience, conditions, the causes and conditions they're living with, how they've been able to find ways to suggest cultivating compassion, facing those challenges.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much. It does remind me of one of the stories in the book by Cecile in the time of COVID, and that spontaneous yet very pure in heart action. And if we look at compassion as suffering together, I suppose that initial intention, really energized by action, is so important. And that's how, for instance, in that specific case, the movement of the pantry became viral in a way. Everybody just jumped on it because it was so pure and so truthful, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And I think Cecile described that very clearly and in a way evocatively, so that if you read that chapter, which is the last chapter in the book, I think appropriately really, of the way when community comes together. We're seeing that at the moment, aren't we, in Spain, for example, where people are coming together to support and help each other. It's just another example, but I think Cecile's. So I strongly advocate people reading that particular chapter in the book.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And Stephen, can we invite you into that discussion too now with the this question? In the book, compassion is presented not just as a moral virtue, but as essential to human survival. And could you explain how compassion can be cultivated on a larger societal scale, and what actionable steps individuals and communities can take to integrate compassion into their daily lives, especially in times of crisis?
Thank you for the easy question, Katja. I think we all learnt from each other in writing that book. I certainly did, because it covers such a broad range of ways of looking at compassion. At the core of it, we have to be conscious of the fact that compassion is not just about empathy or altruism or sympathy. It's fundamentally about doing something about it. And doing something about it does not have to be wait on some other community, some other group. We can do a lot ourselves very directly in that way. But we do have, for example, from the 14th Dalai Lama, the idea that love is, quote, he says, "Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive." And the reason for that is it's all about sharing and being and caring. And not only sharing and caring, it's about deep listening. So you actually see where the other person is in their terms, not yours. I came across that in high relief in the work I did in the United Nations, because I was building across cultures many times. And the whole way of seeing the world was quite different. And you couldn't do anything effective to help them unless you were involved in trying to exercise deep listening. We are in a situation right now of, quite frankly, dangers at every corner, including currently perhaps from the United States, depending what Mr. Trump might do in the future. We live in hope. But perhaps I can just give you one very clear example. The thing is that compassion, firstly, and there's a beautiful image of this. A compassion is a two-way thing. And the image is that of a bird flying, where one wing is compassion and the other wing is wisdom. In other words, we are learning and sharing and caring by every act of compassion we ourselves may be involved in. And if I can give you this one case example that would directly involve myself, and it was in Indonesia during the course of the revolution in May 98, where North Jakarta, 1,188 people were murdered, mainly Chinese. And we had set up a program on environment where we built the environment center between the Javanese and a Chinese community who never talked to each other before, but they started to share things. And what then really mattered was when the mobs came to their area called Kapok Muara, the Javanese men formed a cordon around the Chinese and protected them. Outside that, over 1,000 people were killed. Inside that, nobody was hurt because of the power of compassion and community. I think that's absolutely critical to see ourselves engaged in that kind of relationship in everything we do. It's building and sharing, it's listening across difference in a deep way. And it's very much, I think, a message that comes clearly out of the book.
Thank you. Yeah. And there is optimism in it. It's not all doom and gloom in the end, because it does come back to us in terms of really making those steps, and it really then comes to that interconnectedness, because that's when the boundaries are disappearing, and when we become one in a way. Venerable, what would you like to add to that? I would like to hear a little bit more, perhaps, of how what was written in the book is connected with today's issues, especially, for instance, with the rise of AI or any other.
Of course. Thank you so much, Katya, for your question. One of the chapters in the book was written by two young adults, Alex and Jade, on the rise of social media. How that leads to social isolation and to addiction. And I feel that the rise of AI today can quite easily lead us down the same path. I'm already hearing stories about addictive intelligence. So AI standing not just for artificial intelligence, but addictive intelligence. And we find that in character AI, for example. Just last week, a young adult, 14 years old, took his life because he was addicted to a character that he has created that he knew was fake, but he fell in love with the character. And so there's the blurring of boundary between reality and fantasy, all coming from this deep, deep lack, a sense of lack in all of us. And it's not just him, I think it's in all of us. And I hope that we can then now, through this book, through what we've heard through this colloquium, bring out the best of ourselves in loving kindness, in compassion. First, starting with ourselves, really loving ourselves, and then connecting with the community. There are many chapters in this book that speak to that. The use of art to show what the children are experiencing. And the teachers were so shocked when they saw, the teachers and parents were so shocked when they saw the monsters that were created from these children who couldn't speak or use words to describe what's going on in their hearts and minds, but they created what was in their hearts. And that could start, I think, and drawing people into care for those who are vulnerable. So hopefully we can build a more caring community.
Yes, thank you. And I think what also is emerging, it emerged through the book and through the colloquium of 2024 as well, is really a diverse nature of compassion as it is expressed through different human experiences, interactions, relationships. And Suzanne, maybe you can reflect on that a little bit, because we have various fields, obviously the health, education, policy, community life, and even teaching at Tien, we can see how all these different aspects in terms of mindfulness and compassion come together under one beautiful spiritual home and roof.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm sure, as everybody is well aware and has talked about over the last 24 hours even, is it's a very ethical intention. It's a very heartfelt intention, and it's not easily done. It's not easily sustained, I think. And in a sense, that's one of the reasons why it's pleasing that in this book, what we have is some documentation of the kinds of work people have done to both demonstrate or cultivate their own compassion, but also to find ways to teach it, to encourage others to cultivate this compassion, so that you mentioned, like, one of the chapters about two people who were medical educators of medical students. And as everybody knows, like, medical students have a really intense, lengthy program to become trained doctors. And the people who are devising those programs are not happy to have all what they regard as the absolute essential medical knowledge that their students require to be able to be proper doctors, to make any space for any other kinds of knowledge. But I've forgotten their names. Kwang and Jane both managed to find some space in their medical education program to offer their students ways of looking at and developing compassion in their dealing with patients, which, from our point of view, surely certainly is absolutely essential medical knowledge and practice as well. But one of their struggles was to persuade the powers that be who devised curricula that this is absolutely essential knowledge and practice for their trainee doctors. And I think it's that kind of example. Like, one of the others is someone who, she mentioned Nadine's work, who teaches at Tien itself, utilising the intentions of compassion, of teaching with heart, and of bringing, and not only being, if you like, intellectually rational into the classroom, but to bring a skillful attention to emotions in the classroom as well. And she shows in her chapter how that can, and it's not about being soft or sort of wishy-washy about it. It's actually quite a rigorous practice and process. I mean, we heard in the previous session the talking about, encouraging young children to meditate. And it is something that, you might start with 2 minutes, but it has to build on. You build on that, you build on that. It takes effort, as part of the Eightfold Path it points out. So I think it's something we keep in the forefront of our minds, but perhaps the compassion for ourselves, and we felt this, I think, in the book overall. The compassion for ourselves means too, taking account of this isn't easy, otherwise we'd all be doing it. It is work that we have to make effort with, and come back again and again. And that's when I think, working with others is a really important part of the process too, because it's from working with others that you gain that, I don't know, motivation, intention, even support.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned Nadine's work, and I have a pleasure working with her and learning from her as well, and being inspired by her. And the contemplative pedagogy that is being used at Tien and we've been using as educators, I think is really part and parcel of where compassion sits in a way.
Yeah.
And when you were talking, I thought, goodness, education is essentially, it's just one of the sectors. We have health, we have everything, but
Sure.
really, when we talk about, I like to say, higher education, but there is also higher self-education, and in a sense, compassion across any sector, across any profession, becomes a vehicle to educating our higher self to that love that is present. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Katja. Yes, that's a good way of summarizing it. Thank you very much.
I'll make a very brief comment there. It's only this, just to reinforce exactly what you said. I'm inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, because he says, and this is a responsibility that's available to every one of us all the time. If you want to change the world, you have to be that change. And that's exactly where what we're talking about goes.
Absolutely. And it's the hardest part. It starts with yourself, taking that responsibility. And sometimes knowing what shape compassion needs to take. And we talked about this as well. Yeah, it can be really warm and embracing, but it can be quite hard sometimes. And that's what, it depends on what people need. Using those skillful means.
Yep.
Thank you. Venerable. In concluding today's session and colloquium, what are the thoughts for you? Because it's compassionate futures. So thinking about the future, what is it that you would like to share in this last couple of minutes?
Thank you so much, Katja, for facilitating this panel, and to Pema for handling the technical side behind the scene. I hope that everyone is now inspired first to download this open access book from Peter Lang from the publisher's website. Since its release in less than a year ago, we have had over 400 downloads. So I hope that you will also download your free copy as a resource to create an alternative future that is hopeful and that is built on human connection. I want now to close this amazing colloquium. In the opening yesterday, I mentioned that I was looking forward to learning from this wide group of speakers. Honestly, I was not prepared for the diversity and depth of all the presentations and discussions that followed. I saw humanistic Buddhism in action, with live examples of empathy, kindness, and compassion. In response to Dr. Lancaster's insightful and challenging open keynote, I feel that we can respond to the aging population, planetary boundaries, and technological challenges with a commitment that uses the values which represent the best of humanity. 2 years ago, I came up with this idea to hold a 24-hour colloquium. I'm very grateful that the universe answered with this incredible suite of partners from VU Amsterdam, University of Malaya, University of San Carlos, University of the West, the Institute of Humanistic Buddhism in Foshan HQ, and all my colleagues in Tien Institute. The teamwork was really what made it possible for this spectrum of speakers and the intensity of the questions and answers through these 24 hours. We heard evidence-based and heartfelt experiences shared from Buddhist, interfaith, First Nations, and secular communities. I do not have enough words to adequately describe what we have enjoyed over the past 24 hours. I just want to thank the leadership and all the invisible hands of the various organizations for supporting your teams. I'm grateful to the sponsor, the Xingyun Education Foundation Australia, for its generous support of the book and as well as this colloquium. And please also accept my humble gratitude to everyone who has participated in so many more ways than one to make this colloquium such a success. Do stay in touch. We will be putting the recordings on our website. I know that not everyone could go through all 24 hours, although some of you might have stayed up late with some caffeine shots. We will try to collect all the recordings, put them on various institutions' websites, and inform you when they're ready. As we conclude this colloquium, I wish to dedicate the merits of this past 24 hours to all sentient beings and to your communities for a brighter and more compassionate future for all. Thank you, everyone. Stay well, keep well, stay in touch.
Thank
Bye.
you.
everyone.